As our collective national sorrow reaches 8 years, the President and Congress face yet another possible escalation in a war that has lasted nearly as long. In our third story on the countdown, once again, there is talk of benchmarks and exit strategies, this time on Afghanistan. President Obama commemorated the 8th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks with remarks at the Pentagon Memorial and with a moment of silence on the south lawn of the White House earlier in the day. The president also penned an op-ed column in the New York Daily News saying, quote, "We are providing the necessary resources and strategies to take the fight to the extremists who attacked us on 9/11 and who have found safe haven in Pakistan and Afghanistan." The top commander in Afghanistan, General Stanley McChrystal, is widely expected to ask the president for additional troops. But President Obama had already ordered 21,000 more troops to Afghanistan in February, which will bring U.S. forces there to 68,000 by the end of this year. And the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Carl Levin, today said that the president should not send more troops to Afghanistan unless and until it nearly doubles Afghan armed forces. He told our own Andrea Mitchell that Congress awaits an assessment by the president.
Well, we don't know what the Congress will do until we get a recommendation from the president and from General McChrystal. But I believe very strongly that when it comes to more combat troops, which are the people who are the most visible with the greatest footprint at the greatest risk in Afghanistan, that we should not at this time be committing to more combat forces until we have done what we need to do, and which I think most people believe we should do, which is to strengthen the Afghan army.
This after the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, said yesterday, quote, "I don't think there's a great deal of support for sending more troops to Afghanistan in the country or in the Congress." But from some Republicans, unusual praise for the president on this subject. House Majority Whip Eric Cantor today saying he applauded President Obama for his continued support for the Afghan war. Let's bring in the senior fellow at the Center for American Progress and the former Assistant Secretary of Defense under Ronald Reagan, Lawrence Korb. Thanks for your time tonight.
Nice to be with you.
Now, it seems the next major choice facing the president on Afghanistan is indeed going to be whether or not to send even more troops. Is that where we are?
Well, I think that's where we are, and I think Senator Levin said no more combat troops, but he did say you're going to need more troops for training. And remember, some of the troops that President Obama sent in there were for training. And I think the president is going to have to weigh the recommendation he gets from General McChrystal to decide more troops and what kind of troops.
And if Democratic leaders like Nancy Pelosi and Chairman Levin ultimately really do oppose the notion of additional troops, how difficult can this get for the president politically and perhaps even budgetarily in terms of the budget for Afghanistan, even with conservative commentators like George Will on the right urging a complete withdrawal from Afghanistan?
Well, I think he's going to have to do what he did in health care, is make the case to the American people why we need to do this. I think it's important to keep in mind that we're almost starting anew. The Republicans, like, Eric Cantor, are hypocritical. The reason we have the problems there is because they ignored it for so long, would not honor the requests that our commanders made for troops, and focused so much on Iraq, which had nothing to do with the events of 9/11.
And within this context, how should we view the election irregularities in Afghanistan, which certainly don't help the cause politically, but should we be separating that from the military operation in Afghanistan?
No, I don't think you can, because at some point we're going to have to turn it over to the Afghan people if we have enough security forces, and you're going to have a government that can provide security and can provide justice. And until you do that, that's a big problem. And I think that's almost even more critical than the number of troops, to ensure that you get a government that has the support of the people and is not corrupt.
Now, the Obama administration has reached out to Congress and to the staff and has asked them to draw up a list of benchmarks, 50 benchmarks that it can use to measure success in Afghanistan. Is that the way to approach this?
Well, I think you have to be careful with benchmarks because you get back to the Vietnam era of body counts, and I think you got to look more at the qualitative. Some would be helpful if you can cut down the number of Afghan civilians that are dying, for example. You cut down the number of improvised explosive devices. But I think you have to be very careful because it's not a quantitative thing. It's really a qualitative. You can double the number of Afghan security forces, but the real question is how effective will they be?
Now, if we were to get the key benchmarks that you'd want to use right now in terms of for the president to make his decision, what would they be?
Well, I think it would be the support of the Afghan people. Will you able to provide more security, particularly in the south and in the east, the areas where the Taliban has come back? And how long will the troops have to remain there until the Afghan security forces are ready? I think that's the key thing. We found out in Iraq that it's one thing to have a number of troops, another thing to have them be effective. And while I commend Chairman Levin for trying to double the number, I don't think that can be done as quickly as he seems to feel it can be.
Lawrence Korb, former Assistant Defense Secretary, now with the Center for American Progress. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.